I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here we are. My name's Eric, I'm 35, and I live in Denver. I work in software development, a job that keeps me busy but also lets me enjoy a comfortable life. I've always been the type to avoid drama, to keep things simple. But apparently, life had other plans that I met my wife, Laura, 10 years ago at a mutual friend's wedding. She was vibrant, outgoing, and had this way of making everyone around her feel like the most important person in the room. I was instantly drawn to her. We hit it off, dated for a few years, and eventually tied the knot. For a long time, I thought I had it all: a happy marriage, a loving wife, and a stable life, but over the past year, things started to shift. Little things at first. Laura became distant, her phone never leaving her hand. Late nights out with her friends became more frequent, and she always had an excuse: girls' nights, work events, just needing some space. At first, I chalked it up to stress or maybe just a phase. After all, every marriage has its ups and downs, right? But then there were the conversations she wouldn't have. The dodging, the avoidance. The way she'd get irritated if I asked about her day. And the worst part? It wasn't just that she was pulling away, it was that I felt like I was losing her, and I didn't know why. That I tried everything: more date nights, more conversations, more effort. But it felt like trying to hold on to water. The more I tried, the further away she drifted, and then, I found out the truth. And it was worse than I could have ever imagined. That I sat there staring at my phone, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. Melissa thought Laura was at home. Laura thought I wouldn't question it. And here I was, realizing in real time that my wife had just blatantly lied to me. But why? 100 thoughts raced through my head, but one thing was crystal clear: she wasn't where she said she was. And the worst part? I had no idea where she actually was. That I forced myself to take a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. My first instinct was to call her, but I stopped myself. If she was lying, she'd have an excuse ready. She'd manipulate the conversation, turn it around on me, make me feel like I was the crazy one for questioning her. No, I needed proof before I confronted her. I stood up, grabbed my jacket and keys, and walked out the door. I had no idea where I was going, but my gut was screaming at me to do something. As I got in my car, I pulled up the location sharing app we had installed years ago. It was something we had set up when she started working late, just so we could check in on each other if needed. I hadn't used it in ages, but tonight, I tapped it open with shaky fingers, and there she was, not at Melissa's house. Not at a restaurant. A residential street across town. I didn't recognize the address, but that only made it worse. My stomach twisted as I zoomed in on the map. Who lived there? My first thought was that she could have been at another friend's house, but if that were the case, why lie? Why not just tell me? I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I should have turned around, should have given myself time to process. But something inside me snapped. I started driving. Every minute on the road felt like an hour. My hands were sweating, my breathing uneven. I kept thinking, what if I'm wrong? What if there's an explanation? But deep down, I knew. I already knew. When I turned onto the street, I cut my headlights and pulled over a few houses away. I scanned the addresses, double-checking the one on my screen. Her location was still here. I sat there for a moment, staring at the house. The lights were on. A single car sat in the driveway, not hers. A wave of nausea hit me so hard I had to grip the dashboard to steady myself. This was it. The moment my life would change. And then, as if the universe needed to twist the knife even deeper, the front door opened and Laura stepped out. She was laughing. Smiling. Comfortable. And then a man followed her, not just any man, Brian. My so-called friend. I watched as he walked her to her car, his hand grazing her lower back in a way that wasn't casual. It wasn't just a friendly goodbye. It was something else. Something intimate. Everything inside me shattered. My chest tightened. My head felt light. I had spent years loving this woman, building a life with her, trusting her. And here she was, sneaking around behind my back like I meant nothing, that I clenched my jaw, gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers ached. I could have confronted them right then and there. I wanted to. I wanted to storm out of my car and demand answers. But I didn't, because suddenly, I didn't need them, that I already knew the truth. I had seen it with my own eyes. Laura got into her car and pulled away, completely unaware that I had just watched her destroy our marriage in real time. I sat there for a long time after she left, staring at Brian's house, at the place where my wife had spent her night lying to me, pretending to be someone she wasn't, and then, I drove home, because this wasn't just about catching her in a lie. This was about what came next. The drive home felt unreal. Like I was floating outside my own body, watching someone else live this nightmare. The city lights blurred past me, but I barely saw them. My mind kept replaying the image of Laura and Brian outside his house, her laugh, the way his hand rested against her back like it belonged there. I gripped the steering wheel, jaw clenched so tight it hurt. How long had this been going on? Was I the fool who had been blind for months, maybe years? Had she ever even loved me, or had our entire marriage been some elaborate performance? By the time I pulled into my driveway, my hands were shaking. I wasn't just angry, I was devastated. I had built my life around this woman, trusted her with everything, and she had treated our vows like they meant nothing, but I needed a plan. I wasn't going to explode and give her the satisfaction of seeing me broken. No, I was going to be smart. I needed proof. I walked inside, sat on the couch, and forced myself to breathe. Then, I pulled out my phone. First, I checked our phone records. If she was this comfortable lying to my face, there was no way this was a one-time thing. And sure enough, her call log was full of messages and calls to Brian late at night, early in the morning, during times when she had claimed she was busy at work or out with Melissa. It was all right there, hidden in plain sight. That I opened our shared cloud storage next. It was something we had set up years ago to back up photos. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. But I found it. A folder titled Work Stuff. Inside? Screenshots. Pictures. Texts between them. I can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing. He has no idea. I feel bad, but it's just different with you. I swallowed down the bile rising in my throat. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment, this was a full-blown affair, and I had the receipts. My heart was hammering in my chest, my entire body vibrating with anger. She had been sneaking around with my own friend, laughing behind my back while pretending to love me, and now, she was on her way home, completely unaware that her lies were crashing down around her. I had two choices. I could wait for her to walk through that door and confront her immediately, demand answers, demand to know why she had chosen to destroy our life together. Or I could play the long game, expose her. Make her squirm. Make her regret ever thinking she could get away with this. I took a deep breath, forced myself to calm down. I had all the proof I needed. Now, it was about control. I heard the garage door open. My time was up. Laura walked in, tossing her purse onto the counter like it was just another normal night. She stretched, let out a fake little sigh, and smiled at me. Smiled. Hey, babe, she said. You're up late. I looked at her, really looked at her. At the woman who had vowed to love me forever, the woman I had given everything to, the woman who had just walked through my door after spending the night with another man. I forced a smile, pretending nothing was wrong. Yeah, I said, keeping my voice even. Just couldn't sleep. She walked over, pressing a kiss to my cheek. And I let her, because she had no idea what was coming, but soon, she would. I sat there, letting Laura carry on her little charade, pretending she hadn't just spent the night at another man's house. She had no idea that I knew. That I had seen her. That I had proof of everything. And the worst part? She acted like nothing had happened. She walked into the kitchen, pulling a bottle of water from the fridge. Long day? She asked casually, as if she wasn't a complete fraud. I watched her carefully, studying every movement. She looked tired, but not in the way someone does after a stressful workday. She looked satisfied. Relaxed, and that made my blood boil. "Yeah," I said, keeping my voice even. "You?" She hesitated for half a second. "Oh, you know, same old. Melissa and I just talked for hours. She's going through a lot." Lies. Effortless. Practiced. Delivered with a smile that I forced a nod. "That's nice. Hope she's doing okay." She sighed, putting on her concerned friend act. "Yeah, she'll be fine. Just some work drama." Then she yawned, stretching her arms dramatically. "I'm exhausted. I think I'll shower and head to bed." A shower. To wash off the scent of him that I clenched my fists under the table. My entire body screamed at me to call her out right then and there, to throw every piece of evidence in her face. But I held back. I wanted her to think she was getting away with it. "Sounds like a good idea," I said instead. "I'll be up in a bit." She smiled, leaned down to kiss me again, and then disappeared upstairs. As soon as I heard the shower turn on, I exhaled the breath I hadn't realized I was holding. I had never felt this level of betrayal before. It was physical, like something was twisting inside me, trying to claw its way out, but I needed to stay in control. That I opened my laptop and pulled up everything I had saved. Screenshots. Call logs. The messages from the cloud storage. Every piece of evidence was right there, a damning collection of proof that Laura had systematically destroyed our marriage. That I wasn't just dealing with infidelity. I was dealing with a woman who had spent months, maybe longer, crafting lie after lie, looking me in the eyes and pretending to be my wife while she was sneaking around with someone I had trusted. And now, I needed to decide what to do next. That I could confront her tonight. Lay everything out, watch her scramble for excuses. But that was too easy. No, I wanted her to feel the weight of her choices. I wanted to be calculated. Methodical. Just like she had been. That I started planning. First, I made backups of everything on my laptop, on a USB drive, even on a cloud server under a separate account. I wasn't about to let her gaslight me out of the truth. Next, I sent a message to Melissa. "Hey, thanks for letting me know about tonight. There's something I need to talk to you about. Can we meet tomorrow?" I didn't know if Melissa was involved in the cover-up or if she had been used as an excuse, but either way, I needed answers. Then, I started thinking about logistics. Our finances. The house. How I could dismantle this life we built without letting her manipulate the situation, because I knew one thing for sure: this marriage was over. I heard the water shut off upstairs, followed by the sound of Laura moving around the bedroom. A few minutes later, she came back down, dressed in one of my old t-shirts, her hair damp. "You coming to bed?" she asked, stretching. That I looked at her, at the woman I had once considered my partner, my best friend, my future. She had no idea that this was the last night she'd ever fall asleep thinking everything was normal. That I smiled. "Yeah, I'll be up soon." She nodded, completely unaware of the storm that was about to hit her. And as she walked away, I felt something shift inside me. That I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I wasn't confused. That I was ready to end this on my terms. The next morning, I woke up before Laura. It was the first time in days I felt clear-headed. No more second-guessing, no more hoping there was some rational explanation. I knew the truth. And now, it was just a matter of how I wanted to end it. Laura stirred beside me, stretching with a sleepy smile. "Morning," she mumbled, rolling closer to me like nothing had changed. Like she wasn't living a double life. That I forced a small smile. "Morning." Inside, I felt nothing but cold detachment. That I got out of bed, went about my morning routine, and waited until she left for work before I made my move. I had a meeting with Melissa today, and I needed to be ready. I arrived at the coffee shop early, sitting at a table by the window so I could see her coming. When she finally walked in, she looked confused, maybe even a little nervous. "Hey," she said, sliding into the chair across from me. "Everything okay?" I didn't answer right away. I just pulled out my phone, opened the text she had sent me last night, the one where she had unknowingly exposed Laura's lie, and set it on the table in front of her. Melissa looked at the screen, then back at me, her face draining of color. Oh, God. What's going on? I leaned back, crossing my arms. That's what I'd like to know. Laura told me she was with you last night. You told me she cancelled. So, where was she? Melissa swallowed hard. Alex, I swear I didn't know she was lying to you. I had no idea. She told me she wasn't feeling well. I studied her, looking for any sign that she was covering for Laura. But she looked genuinely shocked. She wasn't sick, Melissa. She was with Brian. Her eyes widened. Wait, Brian? You're Brian? I nodded, my jaw tightening. My so-called friend. Melissa shook her head, disgust flashing across her face. I knew something was off, but I never thought. God, Alex, I'm so sorry. I let out a slow breath. How long do you think it's been going on? She hesitated, like she was piecing things together in her mind. She's been weird for months. Secretive. Distracted. I asked her about it once, and she brushed it off, said she was just stressed. But now that I think about it, she trailed off, looking guilty. There were times she'd cancel on me last minute. Always some excuse. I clenched my fists under the table. Melissa had been used as an alibi. Are you going to confront her? She asked quietly. I nodded. Oh, I'm not just confronting her. I'm ending this. But I want to do it the right way. Melissa sighed, shaking her head. She doesn't deserve you. I appreciated her words, but I wasn't looking for comfort. I was looking for justice. I spent the next 48 hours preparing. I wanted this to be something Laura wouldn't forget. Something that would make it impossible for her to weasel her way out with lies or manipulation. First, I scheduled a dinner with both her and Brian. I wanted them in the same room when the truth came crashing down. I told Laura it was a small get-together, with friends, just an informal evening to relax. She agreed easily. She had no idea she was walking into a trap. Then, I gathered everything: the screenshots, the call logs, the photos. I had a whole arsenal of proof. Finally, I called a lawyer. I wasn't waiting for excuses. I wasn't waiting for fake apologies. This was war, and I was going to win. The night of the confrontation, I arrived early. The restaurant was one Laura and I had been to many times before, a place that used to mean something. Now, it would be the place where she faced the consequences of her actions. Laura arrived first, greeting me with a kiss on the cheek like she hadn't been lying to my face for months. Brian showed up a few minutes later, looking smug as ever. Neither of them had a clue. We ordered drinks. I made small talk, letting them settle in. And then, when the moment was right, I leaned back and placed my phone on the table. I need to show you both something, I said, keeping my voice calm. Laura tilted her head, confused. Brian raised an eyebrow. What's up? I pressed play. A slideshow of their texts filled the screen. Every stolen moment. Every secret plan. Every disgusting betrayal. Laura's face went pale. Brian stiffened, his drink frozen halfway to his mouth. I let the silence stretch, watching them squirm. Laura was the first to speak. Alex, I cut her off. I don't want to hear a single word. Not a single excuse. You two deserve each other. Brian tried to recover, his face twisting into something defensive. Man, it wasn't like that, I laughed, shaking my head. Oh, really? Tell me, Brian, how was it? Neither of them had an answer. I stood up, tossing some cash on the table. You can have each other. I hope it was worth it. And then, I walked away. For the first time in months, I felt free. The fallout was exactly what I expected. Laura tried everything: calls, texts, showing up at my place. She cried, begged, said it was a mistake. That she didn't mean to hurt me. But she had made her choices. And I had made mine, Brian. He vanished from my life. Not that I cared. As far as I was concerned, they were both nothing more than a lesson I had learned the hard way, and me, I moved on. I wasn't broken. I wasn't defeated. I was free, because in the end, their betrayal didn't define me. I wish I could say that walking away from that dinner was the end of it. That I never had to deal with Laura's lies or Brian's betrayal again. But life is never that clean, never that simple. People like them don't just accept consequences, they scramble, they manipulate, they try to rewrite the story to make themselves the victim. The first wave hit the very next morning. Laura started calling. Over and over. I ignored every call, every voicemail, every text. But she didn't stop. She left messages that started out defensive, angry, even. You blindsided me, Alex. You humiliated me in public. How could you do that? Oh, the irony. She was mad at me for exposing what she did. Classic. Then, the tone shifted. I made a mistake. I was confused. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Can we talk? Confused? She'd been carrying on with Brian for months. That wasn't confusion, that was a choice. By the third day, she showed up at my apartment. I could hear the knock, the hesitation in her stance, the way she lingered as if she still had some hold over me. I let her knock. Let her wait. Let her sit with the weight of her decisions. Eventually, she gave up. But Brian? He didn't disappear so easily. It happened at work, because of course it did. He had the nerve to act like nothing had changed. Hey, man, he said casually as he walked past my desk, as if he hadn't just destroyed years of trust. I turned slowly, taking my time. I could feel the tension radiating off him, the way he wanted to play it cool but knew he couldn't. You seriously think we're just gonna pretend this never happened? I asked, my voice steady but sharp. He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Look, Alex, I get it, okay? But things just happened. I laughed. I actually laughed. Oh, they just happened? Like you tripped and fell into my wife? His face darkened. It wasn't like that. No? I stepped closer. Then explain it to me, Brian. Explain how sleeping with my wife behind my back for months is anything other than exactly what it is. He didn't have an answer. Instead, he muttered something about how emotions got involved, and we didn't mean to hurt you, as if that somehow made it better. I wasn't interested in his excuses. You know what, Brian? I said, my voice calm, even. I used to think you were my friend. But now? I just feel sorry for you. Because if you think a relationship built on lies and betrayal is going to last, you're an even bigger idiot than I thought. I didn't wait for him to respond. I walked away, leaving him standing there with whatever pathetic excuse he had prepared, and that was the last real conversation I ever had with him. Days turned into weeks, and the dust finally started to settle. The divorce was already in motion. I had made sure of that. Laura had no leverage. I had the proof, the lawyer, the clean exit strategy. There was nothing left for her to twist, no narrative she could spin. I changed my locks. Blocked her number. Cut every remaining tie. It was over, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. I won't lie and say it didn't hurt. Because it did. Some days, I woke up feeling empty, like I had lost a version of myself I could never get back. Other days, I was angry at Laura, at Brian, at myself for not seeing it sooner, but slowly, the pain faded. I started focusing on me again. Things I had abandoned in my marriage, my hobbies, my passions, my friends. I got back into photography, something I hadn't touched in years. I took weekend trips, hiked, explored places I had always said I would but never did, and somewhere along the way, I realized something. Laura and Brian? They weren't worth my anger anymore. Their betrayal was a reflection of them, not me. I had trusted. I had loved. I had been real, and in the end, that's all that mattered, because while they were stuck in their own mess, trying to justify what they had done, I was moving forward. The strangest thing about moving on is that it doesn't happen all at once. It creeps up on you in the quiet moments. One day, you wake up and realize that you haven't thought about them in a while. That their names don't trigger the same sharp pain in your chest. That your life has slowly started filling the empty spaces they left behind. That realization hit me one morning as I was making coffee. For the first time in months, my routine didn't feel hollow. The apartment, which once felt like a temporary holding space between my past and future, finally felt like home. That I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. Of course, life wasn't done throwing its curveballs. Laura wasn't the type to accept consequences gracefully. She had been quiet for a while, but I should have known it wouldn't last. One afternoon, I got a message from an unknown number. "Can we please talk? Just once. No drama. I need to say some things." I stared at the message for a long time, debating whether to respond. I didn't owe her anything. Not an explanation, not forgiveness, not a second of my time, but I was curious. So, against my better judgment, I replied. "What do you want, Laura?" She responded almost immediately. "Just meet me for coffee. I swear, I won't waste your time." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I didn't trust her. Not one bit. But maybe, just maybe, this was the final piece I needed to close this chapter for good. So I agreed. When I walked into the cafe, she was already there, sitting at a corner table, fidgeting with her cup. She looked different. Not in a drastic way, but there was something about her expression like she wasn't as put together as she used to be. For a brief moment, I felt something unexpected. Not sympathy, not regret, just detachment. She looked up, offering a hesitant smile. "Thanks for meeting me." I sat down, folding my arms. "Say what you need to say." She exhaled sharply. "I messed up, Alex." "No kidding, I don't expect you to forgive me," she continued. "But I don't know. I guess I wanted you to know that I regret everything. Losing you. Hurting you." She swallowed. "Brian and I held up a hand." "I don't care about Brian." She flinched at that. "We're not together, if that's what you're wondering." "It didn't work out." I nodded, unsurprised. "A relationship built on betrayal never lasts." She bit her lip. "I was selfish. And I lied. And I took you for granted." For a long moment, I just looked at her. Years ago, this woman had been the center of my world. And now? She was just a stranger who had taught me an expensive lesson. "I appreciate the apology," I said finally. "But it doesn't change anything." She looked down, nodding. "I know." And that was it. No grand speeches. No dramatic goodbyes. Just a quiet, mutual understanding that whatever we had was gone. That I stood up, sliding my chair back. "Take care of yourself, Laura." She looked up at me one last time, and for the first time, I saw something real in her expression. Regret, but it wasn't my problem anymore. I walked out of that cafe without looking back, and for the first time in a long time, I felt weightless. Like I had finally let go. The weeks that followed were peaceful. No more late-night spirals, no more anger gnawing at the edges of my mind. I had made it through the storm, and I was still standing. I focused on myself. Work, hobbies, friends. I laughed more. Slept better. Started thinking about the future again, not as something that had been stolen from me, but as something I still had control over. And then, one evening, I met someone, not in a forced, "I need to get over my ex" kind of way. Just, naturally. Unexpectedly, her name was Hannah. We met at a bookstore when she accidentally knocked over an entire stack of books and I helped her pick them up. It was small, unremarkable, but it felt different. Easy. Light, and maybe, just maybe, it was the start of something new. because that's the thing about betrayal. It hurts. It breaks you. But it also teaches you, and I had learned my lesson well, that I deserved better. And now, I was finally ready to find it. That it's funny how the worst thing that ever happened to me ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me. At the time, it felt like my world had ended. Like everything I had built, my marriage, my trust, my sense of stability had been ripped away in a single, gut-wrenching moment. But now, I saw it for what it really was, not an ending but a beginning. Months passed, and I barely thought about her anymore. The bitterness faded. The pain dulled. That I focused on myself in a way I never had before. That I went back to the gym not out of anger, not out of some need for revenge, but because it made me feel good. Because for the first time in a long time, I cared about myself more than I cared about someone else. That I started traveling. I took a solo trip to the mountains, something I had always wanted to do but never had time for when I was with Laura. I hiked, camped under the stars, and let the silence remind me that I was okay. That I didn't need anyone else to make me whole. And in that peace, in that solitude, I found clarity. That I had spent so much time trying to be the perfect husband. Trying to fix things that were beyond repair. Trying to be enough for someone who never valued me, but I was enough. Laura's betrayal had nothing to do with me. That was her failure. Her lack of integrity. Not mine. And realizing that was the most freeing thing of all. That I didn't plan on meeting someone. I wasn't looking. If anything, I had sworn off relationships for a while, just to give myself space to breathe. But then, one random afternoon, it happened that I met Hannah. It was stupid, really. A chance encounter at a bookstore, nothing dramatic or life-changing. She had knocked over an entire stack of books, and I helped her pick them up. We laughed about it. Started talking, and something just clicked. She wasn't like Laura. She didn't demand attention. Didn't play mind games. She was just herself, unapologetically, effortlessly, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't even realized I was missing: ease. With Laura, everything had always felt like a performance. Like I had to prove myself, work for her affection, walk on eggshells to keep the peace. But with Hannah, it was easy. A few months into dating Hannah, we were at her place, watching a movie, when she got up to grab something from the kitchen. She left her phone sitting on the couch, screen unlocked, and that's when it hit me that I didn't feel the need to check it. With Laura, I had always had this itch. This need to know, to check, to make sure she wasn't lying to me again. Even before I found out about the affair, there was always this underlying tension, this quiet anxiety humming beneath the surface. But with Hannah, I trusted her, and in that moment, I realized I wasn't just over Laura. I was over everything she had done to me. I had let go. I never saw Laura again after that coffee shop meeting. But one day, I got a final email from her. It was long. Apologetic. Full of excuses wrapped in regret. She told me she had made a mistake. That she missed me. That she would give anything to go back. I read it once, then deleted it, because I didn't need to go back. That I was exactly where I was supposed to be. People say betrayal breaks you. That it makes you hard, bitter, unable to love again, but the truth is, betrayal sets you free, because once you've been through the worst, once you've hit rock bottom and climbed your way back up, you realize how strong you really are. I wasn't broken. I wasn't bitter. I was better. And as I sat on the balcony of my new apartment, watching the sunset with Hannah beside me, I realized something else. My story wasn't about what Laura did to me. It was about what I did after, and for the first time in my life, I couldn't wait to see what came next. They say time heals all wounds, but that's not true. Time doesn't do anything if you don't do the work. You don't just wake up one day and feel better. You have to fight for it. You have to rebuild yourself from the ashes of what someone else burned down. And that's exactly what I did. It had been over a year since I walked away from Laura and Brian. Since I exposed their betrayal, since I wiped my hands clean of the wreckage they caused. And yet, life still had one final test for me. One random afternoon, I was walking through the city when I heard someone call my name. I turned around, and there she was, Laura. For a split second, I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. No longing. Just, nothing. She looked different. Tired. Like life had caught up to her. She hesitated before walking closer, her eyes scanning me like she was trying to figure out if I'd even acknowledge her. "Hey, Alex." Her voice was quiet. Unsure that I nodded once, my expression neutral. "Laura." She shifted awkwardly, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "You look good." I did. I knew I did. Because for the first time in my life, I felt good. I had been taking care of myself, surrounding myself with people who actually deserved me, and it showed. "I am good," I said simply. She hesitated again, chewing on her lip like she was debating what to say next. Then, finally, she sighed. "I know I don't have any right to ask this, but, do you think you'll ever forgive me?" I studied her for a long moment, letting the weight of that question settle. Once upon a time, I had thought forgiveness was necessary for closure. That I had to let go of the anger in order to move forward, but now I understood the truth that I didn't need to forgive her, that I had already moved on. "I don't think about you enough to need to forgive you," I said, my voice calm. "I've let it go." Her face fell, like she wasn't expecting that answer. Like she had held on to the hope that she still had some kind of hold over me. She didn't, she never would again. That I gave her one last nod, then walked away without another word, and that was it. No dramatic farewell. No lingering regrets. Just a final moment that cemented what I already knew. Laura was just a lesson. A mistake I had learned from. Walking away from that conversation, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't even realized I was missing, that I had a new life now. A real life. A life that didn't revolve around chasing someone else's approval or worrying about whether I was enough, that I had a job I loved. I had friends who had stood by me through everything. I had built something better from the ruins Laura left behind. And then there was Hannah. She wasn't just another relationship. She was proof that I had healed. That I had finally opened myself up to the kind of love that wasn't conditional, wasn't manipulative, wasn't a constant battle for validation. One night, as we sat on the rooftop of her apartment, watching the stars, she turned to me and asked, "Do you ever think about her?" I knew who she meant. That I shook my head, smiling. Not really. Because the truth was, Laura was just a chapter in my story, and I had so many better ones ahead. That there's something surreal about realizing you've truly moved on. For the longest time, I thought that moving on meant erasing every trace of her. That one day, I'd wake up and feel nothing. That her name would sound like any other word. That I wouldn't think about what happened, not even for a second. But that's not how it works. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without pain. It means looking back and realizing that you survived, and, more importantly, that you thrived. If you had told me a year ago that I would be where I am now, I would have laughed. Back then, I was drowning in betrayal, trying to make sense of something that didn't make sense. I was clinging to a version of my life that no longer existed, trying to figure out how I could possibly start over when everything I built had been burned to the ground. But as it turns out, the fire wasn't the end. It was the beginning. That I didn't just survive, I rebuilt. That I focused on myself for the first time in years. No more sacrificing my time, my energy, my peace for someone who didn't value it. That I put in extra hours at work, not as an escape, but because I actually cared about what I was doing again. I stopped making excuses for why I couldn't take trips, try new things, live my life on my own terms. That I stopped looking at my phone expecting to see a message from her. That I stopped wondering if she ever regretted it. That I stopped needing her regret to feel okay, because her regret was her burden to carry. Not mine. That it happened unexpectedly. One evening, I was out with some friends, grabbing drinks at a rooftop bar downtown. We were laughing, talking about work, relationships, life in general. It felt good, natural. Like I had finally reclaimed the parts of myself that had been lost in that toxic marriage. And then I saw her, Laura. She was on the other side of the bar, sitting alone at a table. She looked different. Not in a drastic way, but enough that I noticed. Tired. Worn down. Like life had chipped away at her, piece by piece. For a moment, I just watched. Not out of longing. Not out of anger. Just curiosity. She must have felt it, because she turned. And when our eyes met, her entire face changed, surprise, then regret, then something else. She hesitated, then picked up her drink and made her way toward me. That I could have walked away. Could have ignored her, left her in the past where she belonged. But something inside me told me this was the last time I would ever see her. So I stayed. She stopped a few feet away, uncertain. Alex. I nodded once. Laura. She glanced around, as if making sure no one was watching. I didn't expect to see you here. I sipped my drink, unfazed. Yeah. It's been a while. She shifted on her feet. You look good. I did. Because I was good, for a long time. She just stood there, like she was waiting for me to ask how she was doing. To open a door for conversation that I didn't, because I didn't care. Finally, she let out a sigh. I don't know if this means anything, but I'm sorry. For everything. I studied her, searching her face for something, remorse, guilt, anything, and maybe she meant it. Maybe she didn't, but it didn't matter because I didn't need her apology. I gave her a small nod, then simply said, "Take care, Laura." And then I turned away. No dramatics. No lingering looks. No second thoughts, and that was the last time I ever saw her. Months passed, life carried on, and somewhere in the middle of it all, I realized that I wasn't just moving on. I was happy, really, genuinely happy, and a big part of that was because of Hannah. What started as a casual friendship turned into something I hadn't expected. Something real. It wasn't like with Laura. There were no games, no mind tricks, no gut-wrenching doubts creeping into my mind. Hannah never made me question my worth. She never made me feel like I was trying too hard, or like I had to prove myself to be loved. She just was. She was the kind of woman who remembered the little things: my favorite coffee order, the way I hated when people interrupted me mid-sentence, the songs I hummed under my breath without realizing it. She never checked her phone during dinner. She never disappeared without an explanation. She was everything Laura wasn't. One evening, as we sat on my couch watching a terrible movie, she turned to me suddenly and asked, "Do you ever think about her?" I knew who she meant. I thought about it for a moment, really considered it, then I smiled. Not really. Because the truth was, Laura wasn't part of my story anymore. She was just a lesson. People think the hardest part of betrayal is the moment you find out. But that's not true. The hardest part is rebuilding yourself afterward. It's choosing to trust again when every instinct tells you not to. It's choosing to be vulnerable, to open yourself up to love again, even when the last time almost destroyed you. But you know what? I did it. I let go, and I found something better, something real, something worthy of me. And as I sat there with Hannah beside me, laughing at a dumb movie, her fingers laced with mine, I realized something else. This was always how my story was supposed to end. Not with heartbreak, not with regret, but with freedom. And I wouldn't change a single thing.